Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Reasonably Effective podcast brought to you by myself, Uncommon Fossil, and 10 Types.
Yep. Hello, everyone. And today we're talking about Pokemon Vstars, which are not new. They're not rotating just yet, but this is kind of why we're talking about them. Right? When's rotation?
It's not announced. I believe at this point we have one more full set because we're gonna give the top 10 list. So it's mostly done, but there's one more full set. I think then in November, is it? And then we have a special set
Yeah.
in January, and then probably the first. Then the next main set is probably rotation, but nothing's been announced yet.
Okay. I mean, that's what I'm assuming. That's what's been recently. So,
Yeah.
yeah, we're talking about Vstars, though. There are 36 in the game right now of varying levels of power and obscurity. I imagine there's some that people don't really know, some that I don't really know very well. Uh,
Yes.
but I came up with the idea for today's episode of it's a top 10 list. Obviously, that's nothing crazy. But I made my top 10 list. I showed it at the beginning of the video. Uncommon Fossil, you've not seen my top 10. You also made your top 10. I have not seen it yet either. So we're going to do a bit of a reaction to each other's top 10s and then try to figure out what the other person was thinking, I guess.
Oh, are we okay? Are we going to try to figure out why the other person did what they did? Well, we'll see.
Maybe. I don't know. We'll see what they're like.
Honestly, I'm not sure that there's going to be a lot of difference. I got to say, like up to me, there's like 12 Pokemon that could be in the top 10, and that's about it. And there's like two of the top 10 Pokemon I think have to be locked in that spot. But we'll get like I think if you're absurd if you make them any higher or lower. So
Okay.
um,
Well, we'll see if I'm absurd or not. But yeah, so let's take a look at the other person's list now, I suppose.
all right, so yeah, we created a list, and I'm going to open it up now, and you're going to do the same thing.
Oh, yours is definitely different. Um, okay, there we go. Oh, yours is smaller, I believe. Okay,
Smaller.
well, I see I think it's smaller.
Well, your cards are not all the same size. So is it 1 through 5 on yours in the
Um,
top row?
yeah. It's so mine I have on screen showing now. And Arceus V-Star is bigger. That's the only bigger one. That's to show
Yes.
it's one.
Okay.
You numbered yours, and then it goes. Yeah, it goes to the right. It's not.
So we
Yeah,
both
you
have the layout's the same for both of us, 1 through 10.
yeah.
If people are confused about what the ranking is yours, they can look at mine for clarity because I made it clear for all.
So what was your number? So what were the ones that you think were locks here? Yeah. So or what do you want to start with? Should we start with the differences? Because they are similar, but certainly not the same.
Yeah, let me see that it's two locks. Well, I'll just say one lock was number 4, and we're matching that. The other lock was number 8, which you did not do. You bumped that one up, and wow, okay. I see. To me, I thought the 1 through 3 were you could have some debate, and I thought 5 through 7 for me was really tough to do. But
I thought 1 through 5 were definitely 1 through 5. I'm surprised. Well, I don't know. I guess Gudra. We'll talk about it,
the
but
Gujar Regidrago
um,
is a tricky one, I think, and I think Alolan Vulpix is about as good, right? You clearly don't, so we'll get to that. Part of it depends what you're looking at with that. I like Regidrago. I think is incredibly tricky where to put it. I will say. And
yeah, it is. But it's yeah.
do you want to? Should we start near the top?
Yeah, so I will say we have the same cards on our list. I believe Hisuian Shidori V-Star would have been my 11 as well.
Right.
They are similar. I thought they're going to be kind of different because normally when we do this, they're completely different. I was half expecting that my number one wouldn't be on your list or something like that.
Yeah,
But
no, yeah. So yeah. Usually we have a lot more difference. So hopefully this doesn't make it too boring. We're in agreement. So let me talk about my 12th Pokemon would have been Leafeon V-Star because I like it a lot, and I think you like it too. And its ability was good, and there was a brief period where with hitting Charizard for weakness, it had some viability, but it just didn't. It wasn't even honorable mention to me. You had mentioned Magnezone V-Star again. I don't think that was that good. That was probably right there, 12, 13 spot. But then Hisuian Decidueye, at one point it was in my top 10. I think at one point I actually put it at I had it at number 9 in the list. And the reason for this is it is one of only 2 cards here that won Worlds. And that's a big deal, right? It won 3 tournaments, three major events, that is. It won Worlds, and then that same weekend it won the London Open. I think what there was a red and a blue, or whatever they called the two groups, and it won both of those. So it had a really good weekend. But that basically was it. It based because I'm looking at it didn't show up in any other decks like winning IRL decks and Limitless. And I was also looking at the city leagues because the Japanese city leagues, you get a lot more sample. Again, you can check on cards quickly. It only was in one city league deck list ever that made a top 8. So, that just it popped off crazy, but it was just such a little. It wasn't the main part of the deck, obviously, and it really didn't have any legs outside of that.
Yeah, I think Aerodactyl V-Star is really good. I think it's directly better than Assyrian Disidra V-Star, except it didn't win the World Championships, but it came out later.
Right, it
So
came
I
out
think
later, so
um,
it does more damage, and it had a very good V-Star power, so it helped counter Lugia.
yeah, and also had a better weakness. Though the weakness definitely mattered. It did have less HP. There's some differences, but
Yeah,
Aerodactyl V-Star is like a really solid one. But yeah, Assyrian Disidra V-Star is like, I don't know. I don't feel like it's that good of a card. It's like a mediocre card, but winning the World Championships, like I don't care too much about tournament placements in terms of when I think of a card being good. Like if it wins a regional or like an international, or really any level tournament outside of the World Championship, it's like, well, that's certainly something that like that's impressive, but um, it's not anything crazy. But then the World Championship is a big thing. The deck is on Limbless here, described as Arceus V-Star, Flying Pikachu. So it's not like even in the name of the deck here. It isn't like
cor-
the official name. Um, but yeah,
correct.
anyway, I feel like there's not too much to talk about with that card, right?
No, I just wanted to make mention of it, and I don't think we need to come back to it now. So I cut you off there. What were you gonna? Where did you want to start with this?
No, I don't remember.
All right. Shall we talk about just? Why don't we just start with Arceus? Because we need to talk about that. Is that okay with you?
Yeah. Arceus. I guess I'll say what it does. If you don't know what it does, has attack that does 200 for 3 colorless, and then you search your deck for up to 3 basic energies and attach them to your Pokemon V in any way you like, and shuffle your deck. And you have this V Star power, which is called Starbirth. If you don't know every V Star, so they are equivalent to stage ones. They are not stage ones, but they're essentially the same as stage ones. And they have a V Star power, which can only be used once per game. We're ranking V Star cards, not like V Star power. So Forest Seal Stone is a V Star power,
Right.
and that's not on the list. Or I assume it wasn't in your consideration, right?
No, and we're also not. I didn't take into account what the V's were for these either. I just looked at the V Star cards, right?
Yeah.
Because like I'm a big fan of Rotom V Star. You get earlier jokingly said, "Hey, did you put Rotom V Star into it?" It did not. But honestly, if I included the V's in it, it might actually I don't know, be close to bottom of the top 10.
No, that I feel like Rotom V's are really hard. I feel like Rotom V would be
Is it like a
like
top 5 V Star then? Even
I
though you
mean,
don't ever want
obviously
to
then
play
it's
it.
yeah. So that gets kind of goofy. And then same thing with like Drapion V Star. But anyways, Arceus V Star then has its V Star power, which you can only use one V Star power at all per game. So you want the best one. They
Yep.
are sometimes abilities, sometimes attacks. The better ones are abilities, generally though. And it says you just get to search your deck for any 2 cards and put them into your hand, which is directly better than Forest Seal Stone in terms of what it does, which is just get for any 1 card. So it can
Right.
go in like a lot of decks. It can go in any deck for its V-Star power, essentially. But then it can go in different decks to accelerate energies. So we have it with Giratina V-Star, which we will talk about, and a bunch of other V-Stars, as well as V-Maxes and basic Pokemon Vs,
Right.
and other like stuff. I mean, we see like Chimp Excalibur, um,
Right.
Armarouge, stuff like that.
Right, it's super flexible, right? It's a colorless attack cost, which means you can work with any type of energy you need. There were decks, like you said, just use the V Star power, like the early Charizard EX decks played the Arceus so you could get your rare candy and get your Charizard set up to a large extent, which makes just shows how good it is. The HP is regular. It's just incredibly versatile. I also look. I looked at the City League pages. There's 47 pages of City League decks for Arceus. It's been a good deck from the very beginning. It won worlds once. It's won NEIC. It's won EUIC deck with it with different builds too. So obviously, the early days it was built with Inteleon, where it's just largely Arceus deck. That was a very good deck there. Like you said, Giratina, it was the early way to play Giratina to power it up. The Flying Pikachu deck, of course, was the one that worlds. And then the Duraludon deck, which I had kind of forgotten about, that won of the internationals. I don't remember which one it was, but that deck
I
saw a lot
think
of
it was
success.
the European one. Could be wrong about that.
It could be, yeah. So it won 21, which is by far the most of the international tournaments listed on Limitless. So it had huge success, and it's been a major card just throughout the whole time.
Yeah, I guess I feel like now in current standard, like it's not that good.
That's true.
I was considering not having it at number one. I'm gonna be completely honest. So which would have been Giratina would have been my number one. But I obviously didn't do that. I went with that number one. Like right now, Arceus is not terrible. I guess I don't know. It's not really played. I can't find it. Where's
Right.
Arceus? It's at 20 with combined decks. And
Yeah, it doesn't show up
yeah,
on the
it's not really there.
list. It doesn't show up on the list for this last Worlds this year that I could find. So I don't know. Somebody I'm sure stuck it in something, but I couldn't see what that was. So it obviously had huge representations. The first two Worlds it was. It wasn't here at the third Worlds. I think. Well, we'll get to it. I think I'll save it. There's at least one Vstar that saw significant play at all three Worlds, and I think just one, but not that. So I honestly
Well,
I
I
would.
feel like being in like world championships, like it matters some, but like there's also like big like periods in between. It's only one of like four formats. It's not exactly true. There's like more formats with mini sets, but like
I mean that's
um
I mean that's true, and I get that. But the fact that if a single card, a single deck could show up each time, it's a big deal. Um, Although that's not no deck itself centered around a V Star has shown up all 3 years. So as far as I know, but you know,
but also like Lugia wasn't like available for the first one.
right. So
So
Lugia
um
didn't. Lugia obviously would have if it had been around, and it probably would have won. It was insanely good right afterwards. So that's. But look, I think Lugia is the number two, and I was considering making Lugia one, and I hate Lugia. I don't think you like it either. It's just so coined so inconsistent, but when it works, it just pops off so crazy. So, but I don't know. Do you want to say anything else about Arceus?
yeah, I think well, as I said, I feel like the fact that it's not good now and hasn't been like super good and dominant like recently, definitely. I mean, it's not like a
Yeah,
perfect card. I mean, it's a good card. Um, a lot of people when they saw it thought it was like good. I mean, it was like good, but just looking at raw damage on it versus like these other restars,
yeah,
um, well, like compared to Giratina just does more. So Arceus it's not bad. Obviously, it's very good. But it doesn't like truly excel. I mean, its Vista power is very powerful, but it's only a once per game thing. So, like you compare it to Pidgeot EX, like I'd rather have my Pidgeot EX and play than my Arceus V-Star. So, I don't know. Arceus V-Star is very powerful,
yeah. No,
but yeah,
it's fallen off a lot, right? Although I'm surprised to see that it has seen more recent success than I thought it would. Like in the special event in Bologna, it came in eighth, and some other spot in 10th. That was with Giratina, so I'm surprised to see that doing as well there. So and but it's not. You're right. It's not what it once was for sure. But it was a great deck the day it came out, and it's the one deck. It's reinvented itself a lot in terms of its major format, and obviously it's been a tech in just many decks.
yeah. Also, at its best, like I also do kind of understand why Lugia could be the best. Your picture looks blurry for me. Why is it blurry? Um, oh, never mind. I fixed it. So um, yeah. Anyway, yeah. So Lugia, I could see number one. Like Lugia, do you want to talk about that now?
Yeah, I mean, I think we need to talk Lugia and Giratina, right? Because we both have them 2, 3. To me, the top three, you could have made arguments for any of those three. I think there were certain areas that were things were close, and Lugia, Giratina, Arceus are all been very good basically the whole time they've been out in different ways.
Yeah, Lugia's the one that's changed the most. Lugia, it has this weird thing where like it's only playable with Archeops, so looking at it in a vacuum, you can't really like
Right.
evaluate it, and it's kind of weird. But so what it does, you put two Archeops onto your bench essentially. If you have them from your discard, and Archeops has this ability letting you accelerate two special energies from your deck to one of your Pokemon. Each Archeops does that, so that can be four special energies per turn. Extra, right? Extra.
Right.
So you start with you attach one and then attach four and more, which is pretty insane. Obviously, heavily dependent on what the best special energies in the game are. So when it first came out, there was the special energy Aurora energy, as well as a special energy of every single type, a unique special energy. They had like bonuses, but the bonuses were generally mediocre outside of the colorless one, which was strong. Well, literally strong. It's the same as strong energy, where you do 20 more damage with colorless Pokemon and it stacks. But the other ones were just like okay benefits with how I believe the decks were played, but it was solid.
Yeah.
But yeah, Lugia Arcaps, you just go ahead and get all these energies in play, and just do all these attacks to instantly knock out like your opponent's active or their bench or like whatever. And it was really strong.
Yeah, I mean, it reinvented itself more than any other deck in very different ways, right? First, we had all these different special energies, powerful energy, and such, and all the types. And we had the amazing rare attackers that did crazy stuff. And the only way to make those work really was with Archeops, right? So, and you could do different things as well. It had a lot of flexibility, but probably the amazing rares were the strongest way to do it. Then rotation happened. You lost all the amazing rares. You lost all the types of specific special energies, and then single strike became, we thought Lugia was dead, and single strike becomes very, very strong. And that carried it for a while, and then that rotated, and it seemed like there was no way Lugia could work. And then Lugia actually saw some success for a little bit with Snorlax, not the stall Snorlax, but the one that does 180 damage. Just because Lugia being able to set up a single prize to do 180 is pretty good still. That was saw success, but that was like a very weak stage for Lugia. And now Chinchino came out. We have Iron Hands. We have the Legacy Energy. It's once again, it's just reinvented itself once again.
DJ Chinchino.
I think so. Chinchino along
Okay.
with Iron Hands now, right? That's where it's
Yeah.
at.
I think Chinchino specifically was what let it I don't know, like really it's quite strong now with
Yeah.
Chinchino as a really powerful single prize attacker. Certainly it was best when it came out with the special energies. We could do like these absurd things. But now it's second. I think like the second strongest it's been, maybe. And then the single strike was like I don't know. I don't remember it being like super good. Like Lugia definitely has had times when it's been like kind of mediocre. Um, and then there have been like counters to it as well. Arceus hasn't really had counters to that same extent.
Um, yeah. I mean, yeah. So look, I mean, the single strike was pretty strong though. It's been a very good deck a lot of times. It's won for Arceus had 21 first place events on IRL here. Lugia had 14. It won a Latin one IC with that, and it's got. Well, Arceus had 47 pages on Champions League. Lugia has 60 pages of top eight decks there. So pretty insane. It won the Japan
Top
champion.
16, but
What's that? For the
top 16.
top 16. Okay, sorry. Yeah, top 16. So so just a lot of people played it and done well there. Won Champions
Which would
League.
be the past year or so. Um, that's what that would be.
Yeah, so that data skewed towards the newer results, and of course, it's made a strong resurgence. So, it's been a very good deck pretty much its whole time in very different formats. It's fallen off, like you said, at some times. The single strike build was pretty good, not as good as it was before, and then until Chinchino came out, it dipped in there as well.
Yeah. So it's like I think you could put it top because of like this strong. Is that why it's so high because of its insane power with silver or with yeah well with silver when it came out
It,
or
Well,
Does
it's
that
a
matter?
mixture of both. It was look, I put Arceus one, as did you, but Arceus, the downside to Arceus, which is why you I think you might say it wouldn't be one as well. A lot of times it was there it was the main Pokemon, it was also kind of the setup Pokemon, right, for to get something going. Whereas Lugia, well, Lugia's, I guess, largely a setup Pokemon too, because to get Arceus in play, which gets weird. But it's a Lugia deck, right? There's no other V-Star that's happening with it. Although some of these decks you don't attack with Lugia a lot. But the fact that it was so good out of the gate, I think it had just reinvented itself a lot of times, and it's just it's just seen a high level of success multiple times. So to me, that's why I think it's so good. It's been good so long because I think when we get to Giratina, I don't think that had was as good is consist over as long a period.
See,
That
I disagree. I feel like Giratina is like when I think of a deck that's like been good since it came
hmm
out.
yeah,
I think of like Giratina, V-Star.
yeah,
Like I feel like it's like it doesn't change that much. List I was looking at I made a video on like decks from I guess 2 years ago and wait, would that be 2 years ago? No, would that be 3 years ago? I think it was 3 years ago. Anyway, whenever Giratina V-Star came out, I was like, wow, these decks look kind of similar. Like there are differences, but they're not like that big differences. It's like, oh, the Buddy Buddy Poffins were Battle VIP passes, and like the escape ropes are now like jet energies and like switches. It's like it's not that different. And it hasn't had to reinvent itself. Which is why I have it as the second deck. I feel like it's I mean it just like works so well. Um and it works like decently looking at well okay, recently it's supposed to seen play within Reggie Draco V Star. Though it
right.
has seen play as its own deck as well, but um like Lost on Giratina hasn't really been. It's definitely seen less play at certain times, and Arceus Giratina as well. There have definitely been times when it's seen less play, but it's never been like a bad deck. I feel like.
Yeah, well, we'll see. One of the questions is how do we handle this? Because you said it didn't reinvent itself, but it really has. Right now, it's a Reggie Drago. It's part of Reggie Drago, right? For the most part, when it sees play, and it sees a lot
I
of
guess,
play
but
that
that's like
way.
only now. Like that's only been within like the last month or two. Um, so most of the time, I mean, like starting with like the World Championships chips is really when it became like more so a part of Reggie Draco than its own deck. But
Right, because Reggie Drago,
it's
we'll
not that
get to
long.
that, only picked up recently. It wasn't a strong deck for a long time, really. Look, Lugia, like you said, it was an Arceus. I mean, Giratina, it was Arceus to power it up or Lost Zone. Both strong ways to do it. Both scary decks and different decks, right? That they had different strengths and weaknesses with how those decks operated. So it stayed that way for a long time. I think though, if we didn't have the Reggie Drago build right now, Reggie Drago decks now, Giratina would have definitely fallen off, possibly similar to the way Arceus did, right? It's definitely picked up again because of Reggie Drago. So that's I don't think it's not as strong as its own deck now as it had been at one point in time. I don't think, right?
Well, but I feel like that one point in time ended like a couple of months ago.
I don't know if
Like
that's true. Once you got the Charizard EX and such, like well, the Charizard, right? Just take that. Once you can't knock out your opponent's Pokemon attacker with Lost Impact, yes, you could star Requiem once over the course of the game, but only once. And of course, that's if you had a Lost Zone build, right? So you started to kind of lose the ability to one shot some more of the Pokemon in format, and that changes things.
well, but Charizard really is the main example of that. And Charizard can be one-shotted in through weakness because you do use grass energy.
hmm
Um, and so it is like an issue, but it's not like the big issue. It's like if it was a different type, it would be a bigger issue. But being grass weak means that it's not as big of an issue. And we've seen like a lot of tax being put into the Lost Zone and Arceus decks, specifically when they're playing Giratina to allow you to beat Charizard.
hmm
So I feel like it's a little bit different in that case. I mean, like I do understand what you're saying, and it can't necessarily compete with the EXs, but I don't know. I feel like it's competed okay with them.
Yeah, no, look, it's very good, and I like I said, it could I can see an argument for being number one. It's got in terms of IRL play, it's got the less wins than Arceus and Lugia by a little. 21 for Arceus, 14 for Lugia, 11 for Giratina by my counts on Limitless. Play um, but then it actually has the most pages in in city leagues, and like you said, that's recent. So it's got 66 pages of decks, which is just crazy. So it's seen an insane amount of play recently there. Look, it's very good, and it's been very good the whole time. And yes, the question, I'm not sure how good it would be if Reggie Drago wasn't around to play it in. I'm not sure how many people would be wanting to play a Giratina build, a Lost Zone or Arceus Arctina, but it's been very good essentially the whole time it's been around.
Yeah, so I feel like Lugia having to reinvent itself makes it to me weaker. Like it shows that it does have this like kind of versatility, but it does need to depend on the things around it. So it like kind of latches on to things around to depend on. I mean, Giratina kind of does. It does need like the Lost Zone stuff, but not necessarily. Or it could use Arceus, but it's kind of intended to use the Lost Zone stuff. But that's also like intended. Like it's not like that's kind of like saying Lugia needs like Arc-Gaps. So I
Right.
don't know. But then we have four, right? Or is there more to say about Tina?
No, no, there's just a question of how much is versatility a good or a bad thing, right? And you can go back and forth on that. So, anyway, the top three all very good. Like you said, I think Lugia could be one instead of Arceus. You think Giratina could be one instead of Arceus, but neither of us, I think, when we get to Palkia at four, neither of us see that as being the number one deck, right?
Uh, no,
It,
I see it as the number four there. No, yeah,
not that
I
it
don't think
could
I could
be,
see it
right?
as
I mean,
no.
I never
Yeah.
considered Palkia number one, and when I looked at it, Palkia was clear to me. It was definitely a four. It was definitely better than whatever I could have put at five to me. So it's all right. So Palkia, what it does, origin form Palkia, actually, right? To get the full name out, form
Well,
spelled.
Origin Form Palkia Vstar. Actually, they full name.
That is true. Subspace Swell does 60 for 2 water energy. It does 20 more for each bench Pokemon, yours and your opponent. So it gets to 260 if you both have full benches without any bench manipulation, if I remember correctly. And then Star Portal, the ability is very good. The V Star power. During your turn, you can attach up to 3 water energy to your water Pokemon any way you like. So very good. Very good there, right? You can power up Palkias. You can power itself up in another Palkia and never have to really have problems with getting energy into play, which is good. You can obviously attack. It makes Radiant Greninja a viable option. It's more, that's a tricky one because you lose the energies basically after you do it, and you can't. So it's more of a threat, I think, of Radiant Greninja often than sometimes using it had more downside than upside. But very good, and it had multiple forms. I'll get into that as well. Palkia itself was the deck when it first came out, right? With the Inteleon engine, we had Irida, an insane supporter to work with these water Pokemon, so that was great. It saw some success with Kyurem VMAX, which that largely says how good Palkia is, right, to make Kyurem work.
Well, no, Kyurem was solid. It had like pieces. I mean, like it was designed to work with like Orangu and Rotom Phone. Because it gets the card from the top of your deck,
Yeah,
and that's not really so easy to do right now. There's safe from any X code breaking, but that isn't exactly what you're looking for with Kier and VMAX here. I mean, it kind of is. It certainly it is very good with that, but also, it's not that good. It used it for a supporter.
yeah. I mean, well, I mean, I think with Kyurem was just an alternate attacker, right, with high HP that was situational. I
I mean,
think.
you can one shot any. Like, I opened up a list here. This one plays a 3/3 Kyurem and a 1/1 Palkia.
Wow.
Um, which seems like kind of like very Kyurem focused, but also like Kyurem is definitely the main Pokemon, and it can be accelerating the energy.
Yeah.
Yeah, this one plays like a 2/2 Palkia, but then 3/3 Kyurem. But like Kyurem's the main attacker because it has more HP, does more damage theoretically, and its ability could also stack as well theoretically. And
Okay.
one thing to consider with Palkia is Melanie.
Yeah,
Which
that
was
was.
very good
Yep.
to accelerate a water energy for a long time. It could help you accelerate to Palkia. You mentioned like accelerating to Raging Greninja could be an issue, or to Inteleon itself. You could do that as well in certain
Right.
situations. And it's not that big of a deal because you also have your Melanies, which you're playing, so you have just extra energies.
Yeah, no, it was good. But so Inteleon and Melanie, you're right. I forgot about Melanie. My bad there. Kiram, it saw some slotted into some Chen Pao decks as well, as another attacker in those decks. and now it's reinvented itself with Goldengo, right? This is one that had fallen off pretty hard, and now with Goldengo, it's actually now become two things. It played in Goldengo, which is pretty good there, and it also is its own deck once again with Dusknoir too. So it's reinvented itself. Maybe,
Well, with Dustnor and then also with the stadium as well.
yeah. Although a lot of lists, when I looked at them, actually don't play the stadium. It's just the Dusknoir. I was surprised to see.
Well, the Dustnor, well, there's two different on play limit lists, or what are you looking at?
No, just on Limitless, the IRL one.
Well, there's like Palkia and Noctowl, and there's
There
Palkia
is that
Dust.
too. Yeah.
And there's a few that are just Palkia, but which I guess is just like Palkia Dust. Oh no, it plays both. Wait, it plays Greninja EX. What? Never mind.
I'm looking at
So
like Stefan Ivanov's list was Palkia with
Dust.
Dusknoir, and he's got the 1/1 Greninja, Blood Moon Ursa Luna. So
Okay.
um,
And so there's no stadium in there. So it's like it's either or because you want
right,
to be able to one shot and either one to one shot. But and then with Chimpo Excalibur, I feel like that was also a pretty big thing. Like Chimpo Excalibur, um, Palkia was a common addition to that. You could kind of do that. There's this Palkia Chimpo deck. Was that a Melanie deck? Yeah, it was a Melanie deck with like Suicune V and stuff. It was like Palkia Vstar, and then you had a Chimpo EX, which you could power up kind of with Melanie. Like it's not quite right, but it's okay. Like you can't necessarily one shot everything with Chimpo EX without Excalibur, but
right.
you can certainly get close. And you like kind of can. So Palkia with a Chimpo EX was definitely something that like they had good synergy there.
Right, and the pairing that didn't make any sense to me until I played it, and it still doesn't make any sense, but I know it works. Is with Goldengo. It helps just in different ways, and part of it is it also helps with the whole energy recycling, which you need both with the Qian Pao because you're recycling with that, and with Goldengo. Then it gives you an attacker that does good damage that you don't have to recycle energies over the course of the game too. So it kind of gives a little break in there with the energy cycling as well. Um, so look, Palkia is good. When it first came out, when it was it the set after Arceus that it came out?
Yeah.
So it became the deck, right? Everyone likes the new thing, but Palkia was tremendous, right, with the Inteleon package. When we lost that, it's had to reinvent itself, but it's done a really good job, I think, of staying relevant. And I was really, I had thought Palkia was essentially gone, but now, I'm, surprisingly pleased about it. It has come back to life again.
I mean, like look at I do talk about Guillotine Vstar's stat line and say like I like to say that's very good and it is. But Palkia Vstar's stat, like it's just damage, is very good generally. It's
Right,
not like consistently always very good. Like your opponent can hurt you by a substantial amount of damage by just not really benching many Pokemon, but
right.
that might not matter, and that might not mean that you like lose. It could mean that they lose, but um, yeah, Palkia Vstar definitely has a cheap attack that's very strong.
Yeah, look, it's just to me, I think it's very good. Like I said, I think it's clear it's not quite at the level of the top three because it just doesn't do the big damage. Or Arceus isn't big damage, but Arceus, because of its ability and acceleration, is just tremendous. But it's very good. It's been very consistent, um, and just works nice things. And that ability to some point in the course of the game accelerate three energies. Energy acceleration is always a big deal. So just a really good card.
Yeah, and these are the big four. Like so, with each expansion, there's like one main deck, and these were definitely the main four decks. Arceus was Brilliant Stars. Origin for Palkia was Astral Radiance. Giratina V-Star would be from Lost Origin, and then Lugia V-Star was from Silver Tempest. They were all probably generally regarded as the best deck in the format that they came out in a big part because of the fact that they were the hot new deck, but also they were very powerful.
Yeah, no, I agree. These were right designed to be good. They obviously the new shiny toy syndrome, but also they're just very good. These are the other cards as we get to them. Obviously, they weren't quite the new shiny card. Although some of them obviously were pretty interesting from day one for sure, but just didn't quite have the same level. So I think we said enough for these four cards, right? We know they're really good.
Yeah. So I want to talk about Reggie Draco V-Star next.
Okay.
Obviously it's very, very good right now. Well, right now it's good. It's probably a top 5 deck, but certainly just before now at the World Championships, it was arguably the best deck. Arguably disappointing at the World Championships, but still arguably the best deck. Like people thought it was just gonna um win any. I feel like it wasn't
Yeah,
that disappointing. Um, Charizard and Gardevoir were disappointing at that the past one at 2024. But yeah, I mean, it performed very well. It's been played a lot, but only really recently. It's been played a tiny bit before then.
right.
And yeah, it's just like a newer deck, but it is it is strong and versatile. And so if you're kind of looking at the decks as what they can actually do, once they set up, oh, okay, Dialga Vstar is really insane once it sets up, but it's very hard. It's like hard to set up. Much harder than all these others, except for maybe Hisuian Zorak Vstar can be kind of hard to set up. But Reggie Draco V-Star is definitely something that isn't like super hard to set up. It was hard to set up for a while,
Right.
but it was not like it's not like you couldn't set it up. And then it didn't really have the cards around it that it needed. Notably, it needed Dragapult EX. Pokemon just like wasn't really printing good Dragon
Yeah.
Pokemon. They're
Yeah.
printing like the same Pokemon over and over and over again
Yeah.
that
Can
like
I
did
cut in a
the same
second?
attacks. And yeah.
So for you, I don't think you read the card, so I want to do that.
Oh, that's true.
So and then I want to say a couple things about early days with it too. So Reggie, so it's a dragon type Pokemon, so no weakness, which is very nice. There, 280 HP. And then the attack cost is grass. I mean, yeah, grass, fire. So the dragon type, you'll have multiple types. That's the tricky thing. And the attack is Apex Dragon. You choose an attack from a dragon Pokemon in your discard pile and use it as this attack. And you don't worry about the cost of the one in the discard pile. You have the energy on Regidrago. So it's a really nice box style deck that's very appealing to me for sure. But like you said, that it depends on what other dragon Pokemon are in format to choose from, and that wasn't as good early days for sure. It does have a very nice V-Star power Legacy Star during your turn. You can discard the top 7 cards of your deck and put any of those cards in, or none of those cards, or any cards you discard into your hand. So it also lets you recycle ace specs and such, which is very, very nice. Now, early days it was played with Arceus V-Star. That was generally the way to power it up. But that means you weren't attacking with Regidrago till your 3rd turn at best, right? Because you're not powering it up. I mean, yeah. I mean, I guess in theory, if you went second, you could maybe attack with your 2nd turn, but usually you're attacking with a 3rd turn, so that's generally a little slow, and you generally would have to use Arceus' V-Star power. So it wasn't great at that point, but then we got Teal Mask Ogre Pond, which got accelerated grass energy, so you could then use energy switch, so we could power it up. And Dragapult, like you said, came out, which gave it. There are other good attacks, but that really generally Dragapult that Regidrago decks play one of each attacker, but I think it's pretty common they play 2 uh, Dragapults in the deck because that's just generally the key attack in it. So it's a card that was not strong for most of its life, but it's become the dominant card now, and I do think it will see strong play until rotation too. So that, in a sense, I was trying to factor, should I put it higher because it might move up as time goes on.
Yeah, like it's definitely the dominant V Star now. I mean, Lugia's good now as well.
Yeah,
But it's not above Lugia, right? So, it's not gonna like surpass Lugia. But it's just really, really powerful. And these are kind of the best these cards are gonna get. That might not necessarily be true. Like that's not necessarily true for Lugia, but this is the best they'll get. Or no, with the next set, that'll be the best they'll get. So, um, but like they've gotten like different new tools, and I don't know. I feel like just Razor Draco being good now, maybe it's just like kind of silly to say that it being good now like should mean more, but I feel like it does, right? Like
it
it
did.
kind of
Look,
does.
I think Guja.
Also comparing it to Gudra, I feel like Gudra isn't that good. I'm just gonna say that.
Okay, well, I mean, if you're ready to transition, it's a tricky comparison, right? Regidrago wasn't good for most of the time. It really wasn't. I mean, I loved Regidrago. I love box style decks, and I tried everything to power it up, and far too many things, right?
Oh,
There were
but most of the things were bad. Like you actively went out of your way to power it up in bad
Well,
ways.
this
So it's
Fortress
like
EX that wasn't good, but what they did print, right? Uh, Garrett, the
Gardenia is bigger.
Gardenia's, yeah, Yeah, Gardenia's Vigor, which is quote the new welder, but obviously it was not. But that was kind of supposed to power it up, right? And that was a big flop. So you really had to use Arceus to power it up. But a lot of that gets the credit of just Arceus being good as well, right? It really wasn't good until even if just Dragapult came out. I don't think if we didn't have Teal Mask Ogerpon, I don't think we still couldn't power it up, right?
Maybe. I feel like Gardenia's Vigor. So Welder was a card before that was like really good. Then Gardenia's Vigor came along and it's like kind of similar. I don't know. Whenever I'm playing it, I always just like feel like I'm getting like really like unfortunate like luck, and it's like, how is this happening? How have I like drawn half my deck and haven't seen like any of my like 15 energy cards or something? But um, yeah, it just seemed like Gardenia's Vigor was just this card that was like doomed from the start, despite like not being a bad card. Like I feel like it could have been okay, and Richie Draco Vstar is the best partner for it.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah.
I mean, like you said, we didn't have great dragon partners for it for a while. That was one of the issues. Although, Gudra, which is the next card, I put higher than it is obviously one of the partners for it. Giratina V-Star, which we've already talked about, is so. It had some decent partners from early on, but the energy situation really it's been problematic until what? How long ago? When Dragapult wasn't that long ago, really, that we got it.
Yeah, no, that was just Twilight Masquerade, which was, I mean, the main set before Starlight Crown. It was only a few months ago. So, yeah, it hasn't been like great for that long, but it is very good now as well.
It
I
is.
think Reishi Draco V Star has been better than Hisuian Gudra V Star ever has, and that's like
Well,
Hisuian Gudra V Star just like doesn't seem very good.
okay, so all right, so I put it as five, and I'm right, so I'll make the
Uh,
case for it. First, Hazoon Gudra's won two major IRL events. Reggie Drago's won zero. So I don't know what you do with that. But look, here's the thing with Gudra. All right, I guess first, what does it do? It
I'll read it out here.
Yeah,
I'll read it out.
thanks.
So it's got its ability, I'll read the attack first. It is dragon, and so it has no weakness.
Mm-hmm.
Has 270 HP, and it does 200 for water, metal, colorless. So it can use Melanie, which we mentioned before.
Yep.
Though I don't really remember how much that was used. And then it does, it said 200 and takes 80 less damage from attacks next turn. There are certain things that kind of get through that, but it's nice. Essentially giving it 350 HP, which is certainly quite high. Um, well, assuming you just get hit once, but if you get like hit multiple times, you survive it, then it's even more equivalent HP. And your
Right.
ability, your once per game of Vista power, is you get to heal yourself completely. This is something that honestly wouldn't happen that often, but when it did, it is really good, just essentially wiping out one of your opponent's turns or maybe multiple of their turns.
Right, because the idea behind Gudra is you weren't getting one shot. If it's getting one shot, that's not good enough because it does 200 damage, which isn't bad, right? That's what Arceus can do. That's what like Dragapult does. So 200 is not a bad number, but it's not the best number. But then you're taking 80 less damage, so you shouldn't be getting one shot. And there are two ways to play it from early on. You can play it with Arceus, but then you would use Arceus V-Star power most of the time, so you couldn't use the V-Star power on Gudra. So you were just trying to make a tanky deck, but it saw some decent success with that build. And then the other way it was been played outside of Regidrago, which it is now, of course, is with Lost Zone. And then you could make use of the V-Star power. That probably was the most success it saw. The Lost Zone. It was a very solid Lost Zone deck, is what I'll say. A tanky deck, right? Lost Zone, of course, has good single prize attackers, has a good engine, and then you have this two prize Pokemon that's very tanky, and then you can use the Moisture Star ability once over the course of the game. So now they're having to, instead of two shot you, they're now having to four shot a Gudra, and that should tilt the game in your favor when you force your opponent to four shot a Pokemon like this.
Yeah, I feel like one thing that like Gudra's always kind of been behind Giratina V Star, like directly behind it in my eyes. I don't know if is that something you agree with it or not.
Uh,
Like
Wait,
it's been behind. It's like a second. Like it's not as. It's like
oh, behind
not as
Giratina?
good of a Lost Zone. Yeah.
I
Partner,
agree.
but they're
I
similar. And
agree
then like
about that. And this is but Giratina's top three and potentially top one. Gudra's not definitely not in that category. Um,
yeah, but I feel like it's always been in that shadow, which like to me makes it worse. Um, it's not like terrible, but it hasn't really shined in its own light either. Like it's within a lost zone. It's definitely a deck that it's like it really likes Radiant Greninja. Like it can use that well. It doesn't need like your Tina plays Radiant Greninja and can use it, but it's more difficult because that's not the energy type. But Disney Gudra Vstar can make better use of that. And you're like attacking with probably like one Gudra, maybe two. If you're getting two, you're in a very good position. But um, there are things that can go badly if they one shot you. You're relying on tankiness, and tankiness just generally isn't that good. It's good in certain situations, but a lot of the time it's not that useful. Um, and so I feel like it's not like something that building a deck around. It just doesn't like usually end that well for you. And then like versus Regidraco's like more greater versatility. Like Regidraco can be like super strong. Gudra isn't that strong.
Yeah, look, I mean, the most of the success of Gudra was with Lost Zone, where it was that mix within the deck, right, of what you wanted to do with it. In fact, I'm not even sure what the counts were of things in it. So, yeah, no, this was like a 3/3 kind of Gudra, so it's a solid, it's a Gudra deck. Look, the difference between Gudra and Regidrago to me is Regidrago's very new. Up until a couple months ago, it wasn't very good, right? Gudra's been around a lot. It's got more City League pages of decks. It's got more deck listing on limitless.com. It's just been around a long time. So to me, I give it respect for that. That's why I think, and a lot of these Regidrago decks have Gudra. They all don't, but a lot of them do. I certainly like it in my Regidrago deck if I were to play it. So, you know, it's so I think if you took it away from Regidrago drops a little bit. It is I think one of the strong cards in it, and so I think so I think it gets some help from that and the fact that it's been around for much longer. I give it extra credit for that.
Yeah, that's fair. I could see it going either way. But then we need to talk about. I think we're gonna move on to the next set of
Yeah.
cards we have switched. I got Dialga V-Star next. Dialga V-Star is one of the funnier V-Stars. I feel like is a pretty fair description of it. And it's just what alphabetical.
I'm not sure you
Oh,
mean by
it's
funny,
switched.
but
Yeah, I was looking for it alphabetically, but I forgot it starts with the letter O.
oh, okay,
Anyway,
yes,
so origin form Del Vista here has its attack Metal Blast, which is for it's one colorless, but it does 40 and 40 more for each metal energy attached to it.
yeah.
Then Star Chronos for 4 metal and a colorless, so 5, 220, and then you take an extra turn after this turn and skip Pokemon Checkup unless you're playing Pokemon TCG Live, and then you don't. I actually don't know if that's been fixed, but I don't think so. So the original build of this, it played a 2/2 to Alkaline. I'm pretty sure they don't play that anymore because it's your main attacker, but it was still your main attacker, and you play a 2/2 line.
Right.
And you need to attack like one turn, and that was it was like kind of terrible to be honest, but it was like funny. Um,
Right. This was before Matang came out, right? These builds.
Yeah, and it was even before like there's the Magnezone build, which is like the predecessor Magnezone. This is the one with it's like so crazy. It plays when was it first? I think it was played in this like it was played in a few things, but um it has yeah, this list here has 22 energies and it plays the Miraidon EX to search out the Magnemites, and then it plays like Adamans and like Stormy Mountains to get your Miraidon, to get your Rotom V and Magnemite. And it plays like Irida to get your rare candies and stuff. It's a very bizarre deck, but then yeah, it plays like lots of energy. It's a thing. But
Well, well,
then Dialga came out
so
or
so
Matang.
well the right. Well, the earliest list that I'm seeing, they were metal saucers was still
Yeah,
around,
oh yeah, I didn't say Metal Saucer.
and
So Metal Saucer is like the big thing, which is like Dark Patch.
right, but for metal with Zacian, which of course is a very good attacker. Then to me, the reasonable decks that played it were the Lost Zone decks, because then you could power it up with your
Right.
Mirage Gates.
Yeah, and Metal Saucers. So you had like
Yeah.
extra Metal Saucers because you'd have to use the attack's 5 energy, and you have 4 Metal Saucers. So you'd attach twice, I guess, and then use 3 metal saucers, or attach once and use 4 metal saucers, which is all of your metal saucers, which is kinda hard to do. But,
Yeah.
like, the Lost Zone deck wasn't, like, that good. I mean, I think it plays 3 water energies, but the water energies don't really, like, do much in the deck. So the Lost Zone deck, like, wasn't that big, but most of the decks here, looking at it, are Dialga Matang. Dialga
Yeah.
Matang is certainly not the most consistent deck in the game. I
No.
definitely feel like it's one of, like, the goofier Pokemon, on this list. It's, like, kinda silly, compared to Palkia. Palkia is, like, this, like, serious, solid Pokemon. Dialga is like, "Oh, I attack a couple of times and I win," or I, like, don't attack all game and then I've lost because I haven't attacked all game.
Right. The Star Chronos doing 220 and then taking another turn after it is tremendous, but you gotta get it set up. You have to evolve into it. So if your opponent knocks out your basic V, well, that's not good for you. Um, and you also have to you need to one shot something with a 220, which means you can't hit into like a Vstar or an Evolution EX because then you're not one shotting that probably. You don't want to have to waste your
Have
Star.
to. It's, like, not great, but
If you
you
have to use your
can.
Star Chronos, but you only get one knockout off if it's not good, what you want because you have to do so much work to set up, you really want to take like 4 prizes when you start Chronos. But it's the turn after that also when you're doing the big damage because usually but you have an extra turn, so that's where you're getting to 280 or 300 or more is after you start Chronos. And if you're just using that like 280 to finish off something, that's not a good feeling.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it is what it is. I feel like, so you have it lower. I don't think
Yeah.
there's anything else to say about Dialga. Like, it's,
No, it's
yeah.
good. It hasn't seen a ton of success, I would say. And it was something to have fun with until Matang. It's still kind of something to have fun with, but it made it at least a little. It's made it semi-viable, probably.
Yeah, yeah. So you have Alolan Vulpix V-Star. I had it swapped, so I have Alolan Vulpix V-Star below Dialga. I definitely
Right.
like it more than Dialga, but
Yeah.
yeah.
So Lone Vulpix V Star. It's got 240 HP. So this is the low on the low side of the V Stars, the lowest of any of the
Yeah,
ones
I
we're
believe it
talking.
is the
It
lowest.
is the lowest. Okay.
I'm
Um,
pretty sure.
so, but it's got an attack. Well, it's got a V Star attack that you could one shot like a Mew V Max for no energy. So that you might have used that on occasion back when that was a format. It did 70 damage per each of your opponent's V Pokemon in play. So that but generally that's not what the deck was about because you're probably playing with Arceus or something to power it up. It was well there well the two bit so it Snow Mirage Watercolors Colors does 160 and Melanie was in format for a while too, so that could power it up as well. The attacks does 160 and that it's not affected by affected by affecting your opponent's active Pokemon, which can be meaningful, right? Back in times when Decidueye is being played or whatever else. That walled you off. But then, more importantly, which is why it was played, it prevent all damage to this Pokemon done by attacks from Pokemon that have an ability. And of course, abilities are very key. And with a Pokemon like Charizard EX, big damage, but it has an ability. And part of it was that was one way the deck was really good because you had Charizard, you had Pidgeot, so EX, which also has a key ability, so it made it tough to hit through the Vulpix. So it was a walling Pokemon, usually part of another walling deck. The two ways it was, to me, I think, played in, there were just Arceus decks that would have some Vulpix in it, maybe as a secondary attacker, because Melanie was good, so Water Energy was good, so slapping a 1/1 Vulpix, or maybe more if you thought the wall was important. But then it also saw success paired with Duraludon, possibly a combination of the three Arceus Duraludon in this, or but you might be at one point. Duraludon VMAX was very good for its walling ability, so that walled off special energies. This walls off abilities, so part of a walling deck, right? And it's still, I think, a solid Pokemon to play today.
Yeah, it's okay. I don't know. It's, like, very outclassed to me by Cornerstone Master Ogre EX, which has, like, similar stuff, like stats in general, a little bit weaker, but not that much weaker. But then instead of it being an effective attack, it's an ability and it's on a basic. Like, so I don't know. That card's really good. Um, but it's not like a super. I thought it was kind of broken, but I don't know. It's not been like a truly broken card in the game, I feel like. So the fact that it's, like, so weak compared to that to me definitely makes it like seem much weaker than um it just makes it seem kind of underwhelming. It was a card I like to play at times, but
I think, look,
it's
compare.
definitely a limited card as well.
Yeah, look, it's not, you're not playing an arc a Vulpix deck in and of itself, right? You're playing it with something else like Arceus, and then you're using the Vulpix when the matchup is appropriate. But the reason I like it above Dialga is really until Matang came out, um, Dialga wasn't very viable. Even though it wasn't the main attacker, Vulpix, it's been around and seen play its entire time, I think, right? And it's a matter of as kind of the meta shifts, when does the ability walling off help, when that's more important. But I think it's always been around to some extent. So that's why I like Vulpix, because it's got more, it had legs to me.
I guess. I feel like Dialga's like its own deck, and that's why I like it. And it is like theoretically really powerful. Versus Vulpix is just like kind of there. It's okay. Um, it's like you compare it with Arceus, and you have these like two very like tame attackers.
Yeah.
Um, it's a very like bland deck. It's like
It,
I don't know. It's just kind of there. It can win. It's not like
it
terrible,
did.
but
Hey, it won EUAC along with I think Duraludon and
well,
Arceus
yeah. But
probably.
Duraludon is like this Pokemon are like 300 something HP,
Yeah.
and can hit like it can hit more damage. I feel like that's like a little. It's also kind of a bland Pokemon. But yeah. Anyway, so then we have the bottom two of the top 10, which are still good cards. I
Yeah.
have Darkrai V-Star for its V-Star power, really, which lets you recover 2 items from your discard into your hand. It also can do for 2 colors, 30 more for each darkness attached to each of your Pokemon,
Right.
which was okay, and played some. And then you had Hisuian Zoroark V-Star at number 9, which is an interesting Pokemon, which has its attack Taking Curse for 2 colors, 50 for each damage counter, and for each of your Pokemon that have damage counters on them, any damage
Yes.
counters on them, including yourself. And then you have this Vista Power, which is pretty solid. It's discard your hand, draw 7. Um, and yeah, I mean, I feel like a Hisuian Zoroark V-Star, like that's obviously a main attacker. Darkrai V-Star isn't really that same role.
Right.
But well, there can be, but it's like I feel like it's definitely like that lower caliber of deck. Um, yeah.
I mean, yeah. I mean, I think there's a reason they're both towards the low end, right? I mean, right. Zoroark is its own deck, and you always seem to give the edge towards things that it's its own deck, whereas
Well,
whereas
no,
Dark.
I
Well,
had Gudra lower, so well, I guess no, Majika was also its own deck. So
right. In Dialga, it's its own deck, which you had above me.
well,
So,
yeah, no, that was the only example I thought.
oh, okay,
What
maybe
was
it is. So, look, Zoroark. I like Hisuian Zoroark V Star a lot. Ticking Curse is a good attack. It's a, well, it's potentially a good attack, is what I'll say. It's more of a fun deck than a good deck. It did win a tournament somehow, so that's great there. Um, it potentially, with the new stadium, you can get more bench Pokemon with damage. So now you can hit for what? We can hit for what? 450
four?
damage, something like that.
Yeah,
So
450
so
damage,
there's,
which is a
I
lot.
think that's enough for you, right? So it can hit for big damage. It powers up in one turn with double turbo. The V Star power is good too. It's okay. It's not great, but you discard your hand, draw 7 cards. So it just helps at some point in the game if you don't have some other V Star Pokemon, which you're not with this. Um, it's a lower tier V Star for sure. Suin Zoroark, I'm not going to deny that, but it is the Pokemon of the deck, whereas Darkrai is really, index for its ability. In fact, you were just playing it recently in the deck I did as well, right? The Weird Ear deck with whatever else it had in it.
Yeah, Teal Mass over Pontiacs,
Right.
and
And
Glass
you
Trumpet and some other things.
Right, and you just played a 1/1 Darkrai just to use Starbist. I mean, you could attack with it for 30 damage, but that wasn't, so it's got an ability. It's like if you took Arceus but got rid of the attack and just kept the V Star power. Except Arceus a V Star power is even better than this, right? Um,
I guess so. It's probably better. I mean, it's like obviously an early game thing. Dark V-Star is like a late game thing. So
right. I mean, look, Darkrai is good. Don't get me wrong. I think if you had the choice between the two, you'd take Arceus for that. But Arceus attack is also good, right? does it's tough to power up enough energies to get Darkrai to be a good thing. When people have tried that, I think I tried it a little bit too. It was tough to get going. So Hisuian Zoroark is, I think, a better, it's an easier deck to get going than Darkrai. So Darkrai is a better tech, but it still doesn't see a ton of play as for an ability tech in index, I would say.
Yeah, that's true. It's like, okay. I mean, in the decks it's played in, I said it doesn't really attack, but that's not really true. A lot of them are like Roaring Moon decks, so it can
Yeah.
attack. But yeah, I feel like it's okay. I feel like it's a more serious deck. Like Hisuian Zoroark V-Star is kind of like not the best deck, definitely. But you
that
could be playing a good deck with Darkrai V-Star. If you're playing Hisuian Zoroark V-Star, you're probably gonna be playing a somewhat mediocre, disappointing deck.
That's true. Hisuian Zoroark is a fun deck. It's not considered a top end deck, and it's not. You cannot right. If it's in Roaring Moon, you can attack with it. So that's where it saw most of its play. There were some Darkrai decks early on. I don't think they ever got going too well, though. Probably. Um, yeah, and those are old, and that was
Yeah.
older, right? Back when you had Galarian Moltres V and stuff, as well as the
Oh yeah,
other
yeah.
Moltres that you could at least, you could get some energies going. But it didn't have a lot of success. Mostly, it's Roaring Moon. There's at least one Goldango player that's done it as well, just again for what it is. And Alex Szymanski played it with Dusknoir, not that long ago. So fancy
Yeah.
that. But
I
there's really
played the deck. It was kind
it's
of
really a Roaring
sketchy.
Moon deck, but they call it Darkrai Dusknoir. So
Yeah.
so
But anyways, I think it's solid. Like I think it I mean, what are the tournament results looking like? Tournament results don't matter that much, but like yeah, the regional, which it did win, it was only 124 people. That's like not that big. And it has like some like okay tournament results. They're really like these like very mediocre
you're
tournament
talking
results.
Zoroark, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but hey, it won a regional event. But no, you're right. Look, the results for Zoroark aren't like great. But I think it belongs on the top 10. I think it belongs near the low end of the top 10, probably. Um,
Yeah.
so I think obviously it's off by one place. Like I don't think we're going to get into a huge fight between which is better, Darkrai or Zoroark, right? It's again
No, I definitely think Darkrai is better.
okay.
But
It's better in some ways, but it's very much a support Pokemon that sees very limited play, right? So that's the thing. Like if you're going to say what ranking the Radiant Pokemon and say Eternus is really good because look at what you could set up with it for the three people that have played it. I mean, I think I'd say no, it's not good probably, but you can be that guy.
I don't know. Maybe we're doing ranking the Radiants next, but um, yeah, I think that what we learned is that the V stars there aren't that many and they're kind of top loaded.
Right,
There are some that are okay that we didn't talk about, like kind of like fun, like Hisuian Samurai V star, for example. You mentioned Leafeon V star. I do think Regigigas V star is like a fun Pokemon with some really unique value.
right.
I think Marvel is underrated. It's not that good, but it's all right.
Yeah.
Apparently, you can play it with Cerealage. Yeah, well, you can't, but theoretically, at some point, you could play with Cerealage EX. If you're in Japan, you can.
And you got the Mewtwo starter deck, right? So you could try that one.
Yeah, that's such a good card.
It wasn't like it's not garbage, It's not.
No, it's not garbage. It's not particularly good, but it's not completely terrible.
And then we got the Shaman. Shaman was the starter deck, right? If I recall,
No, I think it was
or
Superior.
Superior. So, but you have both those grass V stars that you could kind of try and hope that they hit. Since for grass weakness could be good, but they'll probably disappoint. So, there were what 34 V star Pokemon, and there's probably there's like maybe 8 really good ones. I would say out of that, which maybe that
Um,
or there's
yeah,
36 V stars. I think once you get down, I think our 9 and 10 definitely are a cut below the others, right?
yeah. I mean, I think our top, like the top five or top six, and maybe the top four. I mean, the top four are like really good. The ones
Yes.
below them are like okay. It definitely starts falling off there. Um,
So
but I feel like it's definitely pretty interesting. Like we now have a pretty good idea of how good they are. Like I'm surprised how some of our lists were. Usually when we do stuff like this, I was expecting our list to be like completely different. Um,
Right.
but tell us if you want more of this style of video. I imagine if we do it again, the list will probably be more different. But who knows? Who knows? Maybe we'll like create the same list of like the top 10 cards ever. Um,
Yeah,
yeah,
well, you should definitely at some point do like the top 10 cards we're going to miss the rotation or something like that, right? And that I can't imagine we're gonna agree on for that. So, and I even thought about that. I guess we're not there yet, but got to start thinking about that one of these days too.
yeah. But anyways, we hope you enjoyed the podcast. Consider checking out our YouTube channels if you're not watching there. We each have our own content on those channels, 10 Types and Uncommon Fossil. And then also check us out on a podcasting platform. If you're listening to us on YouTube, just like clicked on a YouTube video, then we are on podcasting platforms. So you can just listen to us there if that's more convenient, which definitely could be the case. But we hope you enjoyed, and we're excited to see you in the next episode.
All right, take care.